So why did we come up with the concept of Genesis? Well, quite frankly, it's because education focuses way too much on test taking. The problem with that is threefold. Test taking is not a marketable skill. 2, our children are more than test scores. And 3, test taking hasn't really worked. Let's approach the first one. No, it's not a marketable skill because real world problems do not give you 4-letter choices. There is no situation that I can imagine where you're on your job and a boss says, hey, I got a question for you. Here are your 4 choices. Pick A, B, C, or D, and I'll let you know if you're right. That's not how the real world works. The real world requires us to actually think critically and outside the box. It requires us to find answers that may not actually exist. So why do we actually do standardized testing? Not because everybody likes it, it's because it's easy to grade. But easy to grade doesn't help our kids very much. Secondly, our children are more than test scores. Each of them have special gifts, skills, and talents. They have a unique vision and a unique purpose. It is not a possibility for a standardized test to pull any of those things out of a child. Those tests focus on a number instead of what our children are meant to be and what they are called to be. So we have to figure out how to pull more out of them than simply a number, because they are, again, so much more than that. Lastly, testing has not worked. National test scores have actually not improved to acceptable levels. If you look at a test called the National Assessment for Educational Progress, or the NAEP, and you looked at the scores in Georgia for 8th graders, you would find that only 41% of white students are proficient, 19% of Hispanic students are proficient, and 13% of black students are proficient. So white students are way ahead and they're only at 41%. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound like a great number. And that's from 2015. That's after we've been testing kids every year for the previous 12 or 13 years. So after all that testing, the best we could do is 41% for white students, 19% for Hispanic, and 15% for black. Something isn't working. But even when schools raise test scores, there are concerns. The most innovative charter schools are actually rethinking their focus on behavior management and relentless test preparation. That is not to say anything bad about any of those great schools. In fact, the KIPPs of the world are what we know. They do a magnificent job preparing our kids. But even they have decided that there's something missing. There's something more. And partly this reflects a recognition, mostly private among advocates, that although charters have transformed education in some poor areas, that the very advocates who run and create those schools would think twice about sending their own children to those schools. They worry that although those schools can provide the discipline missing in pupils' lives, they can also stifle creativity. I'm not making that up. That is from a magazine called The Economist, an internationally known magazine, and it's from an article from August 17th, 2016. There's also a study that tells us that charter schools, in particular no excuses charter schools, like the KIPPs of the world that do such a great job, are considered to be one of the most important educational reforms of the past quarter century. Those schools increase test scores and 4-year college enrollment, which is amazing. But they have actually had small and insignificant impacts on earnings, again, according to this study. There's a possibility, according to the authors, that what it takes to increase achievement may not actually be what's required in the labor market. So we may increase test scores, but we are not actually helping kids prepare themselves for what the world of work in the 21st century requires. So what should we do? Well, if the problem is improving test taking and scores don't lead to better life outcomes, maybe we should look for another solution. And we believe that Genesis has that solution.